Hey there, this is Christopher McClure from wholenessgeeks.com. That's WHOLENESSGEEKS. And welcome to Meditation Happy Hour, where I share meditations, processes, practices, perspectives, both traditional and modern. Today I want to share with you the contents of a workshop that's coming up. And this workshop is it's a workshop for what I call playing back your dream. So there is it's been around for 50 years or so, a improv theater technique called Playback Theater. And it's where you go to a performance and the audience supplies a story to this ensemble and then they play it back. Well, the first time I did that, I asked them to play back a dream. And numerous years later, I actually joined an ensemble, and then that ensemble disbanded, and I was thinking about joining another ensemble, and I thought, well, how about if I created an ensemble that was just specifically for playing back dreams, because I'm a dream worker. I write down my dreams and analyze them. There's various ways of doing that, and this turns out to be another way of doing that. So I created an ensemble called Playing Back Your Dream, and this we have a group. This is in Boulder, Colorado, and we have a group that meets every month, and we've slowly been adding new people to our group, but we meet once a month and we share our dreams and play them back, and sometimes we do performances. And but in order to be in the ensemble, you need to do this workshop because it basically gets people on the same page in terms of improv technique and what we're actually doing specifically with a dream. So I wanted to share in this video. I wanted to share what the components of that workshop are. So I'm just going to jump right in. The first thing we do, and this is kind of a seminal process activity, a seminal activity. It's called sound and movement, and it's how we warm up, but it's also kind of the basis of the method. It kind of runs throughout the method. And what it is in terms of setup is, in terms of warm-up rather, is that, the people, so if whether we're doing a workshop or we're doing a group, a monthly group, or we're doing a performance, we'll have everybody, including the audience, join in a circle. And like I said, this is a check-in, but the way we check in is that one person will start and they will check in regarding how they're doing, but they will not do it necessarily with words. They'll do it with sound and with movement. So if I was going to check in right now, I might go, yeah, so obviously it was gibberish, but that was sound and movement, and I'm checking in about what's going on with me emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Thing is that when I'm doing that, everybody in the circle joins and does the same thing. They kind of copy me. And I'll do that for like 30 seconds, a minute, and then I'll pass it to the next person. And that will go all the way around the circle till everybody's had an opportunity. And that's the check-in, that's sound movement. And it warms people up, physically, emotionally, their voices. So that's the first exercise. The second exercise is, well, the second part is the actual forms, the playback theater forms. And there's 7 that we work with. So the first one is a game. It's called Zip, Zap, Zup. So once again, you stand in a circle, and you have 3 words and 3 associated actions. So it's about passing energy. So I start, and if I say zip, that means I pass the energy to the person to my right. If I say zap, I pass the energy to the person to my left. And if I say zup, then I can pass it across the circle, And the idea here is that you're doing this as fast as possible, and you're not thinking about it. You're trying to kind of get out of your head and just deal with the energy. And this energy gets passed, and when it gets passed to the next person, then they do the same thing. Now, there's also kind of a wild card, which is called freak out. And so somebody, as their turn, they can yell freak out, and everybody just runs around chaotically and then reforms the circle with a new, order of people. And that's basically the game. And it's like I said, it's about passing energy and to get out of your head. And yeah, that's basically it. So then the next exercise, the next form is just simple mirroring. So you split up into pairs, and there's an A person and a B person, and then the conductor, a facilitator, will say, all right, so now A people are leading, and when A people are leading, then the B people are mirroring them, and then they switch, and then the B people are leading and the A people are following. And then at some point, the facilitator will say leaderless, in which case both people are leading and following. So it becomes this this in-between state where there's just like movement happening, and both people are moving according to that. So that's mirroring. The next form is called fluid sculpture, is what it's called. And what we do here, so if because we're doing this in the context of dreams, so a person tells a dream, and the ensemble, the people line up in a line. They line up. They're in a line together, and at kind of like one end of the room. So the dream is said, and then the key words for the initiation of action are "let's watch," and so the conductor says, "Let's watch," and one person at a time will step out and will do a sound and movement, a repeating sound and movement that represents an aspect of that dream. And as they move out into the center of the room, and then they stay in that position. Still doing that sound and movement. And and then the next person will come out doing a sound and movement, expressing an aspect of the dream, and make a relationship to that first person. And then the third person will come out doing a sound and movement, making a relationship to those two people. So what we're forming here, we're kind of forming this moving human machine, or creating this sculpture that's moving, except that when everybody's out, that first person, when they're become sort of the leader or the initiator, and they freeze when everybody's out, and it's taken shape. They freeze, and then everybody else freezes, and then that's the sculpture that's created. It's like that becomes the snapshot of that interpretation of the dream. So that's fluid sculpture. So the next one is called multi-part tableau. Now, it's similar to fluid sculpture, except that you divide the dream into 3 parts. So everybody's in a line once again, and the first, say, the 3 parts of the dream are like the beginning, the middle, and the end. So the beginning of the dream is told, but this time everybody in the line moves out together, but they're each doing a different aspect of the dream. And then they get out to the middle of the room, and that movement out is like, it's the metaphor is like it's a breath, there's like and then they freeze. And then the conductor, or the person with the dream, says the second part of the dream, and then they take another breath of sound and movement, in interpreting an aspect of the dream, and freeze. And then the last part of the dream is spoken, and then they move, sound and movement, interpreting that last aspect of the dream, and then they freeze. So in this one, everybody is moving at the same time, but they're doing different aspects of the dream, and the dream is taken in 3 parts. So that's multi-part tableau. So the next form is called chorus. Now, chorus is it's more difficult to master this form, because like the remember in the mirroring exercise where it's leaderless, well, it's the same quality in the chorus. The chorus is leaderless. So everybody's standing in the line, and the dream has already been told, so everybody kind of has understood the dream, and everybody's standing in the line, and they're like close enough to actually be like feeling each other's shoulders. There's like a kind of an organic cohesion to this line. And so somebody says, "Let's watch," and it's like there's a certain aspect of the dream emerges through sound and movement, and the very first person who initiates, everybody follows. But that could easily morph into another aspect of the dream, and then everybody follows. And if 2 people sort of start at the same time, either they decide, "Oh, you're going to go," or "I'm going to go," or they can even do it together, but they've got to make room for each other. You've got to slow down your movement and your voice, so that the 2 can kind of commingle. So, and the various aspects of the dream are coming out in this activity. Now, there's a, a second part to this. So, if that kind of, there's like a certain aspect of the dream going on, and the whole ensemble is doing it, a person in the line can step out like to the, you're playing to the audience, but they can step out to the side in front, and they can play back a different aspect. It's almost like a commentary um, of the dream, or of an aspect of the so there's an aspect of the dream going on, and they can make commentary on that. So they make the commentary, and then that commentary has to be absorbed by the ensemble, and then that person enters back in, and this kind of splitting off and doing a commentary that can happen, as many times as needed. Um, but the person always comes back in, and this activity of expressing the different aspects of the dream, uh, continues until there's a sense of completion, and somebody says scene, which is the general way that a scene is completed. It's just this call scene, and anybody can do that. So that's chorus. So then there's flocking. Now, flocking is very similar to chorus. The only thing is that that line, right? This line. Oh, I forgot to say that. When the chorus, when you say "let's watch," everybody steps out one step together. So it's just the line just moves forward into the room, but stays in that new position. With flocking, that line can move around the room, and the line can like snake around, and so we're still doing this, this exploring the different aspects of the dream, and this kind of, it's leaderless, and the commentary is still going on. The only difference is that the line is actually moving through space, and can change, that it can even become a circle, I suppose. So that's flocking. Okay, so the last the last form that we explore in this workshop is what's called pairs. So pairs is it's an activity where we get to explore two sides, two kind of opposing sides of an issue, of a dichotomy, a polarization. So the way you set it up is that you split into pairs, and you have like kind of like a, a square. You have a couple in the left forward, couple in the right forward, couple in the back forward, back in the back right. So you have left forward, right back, right, left back. And if you have more pairs, then you put them along the lines. But basically, you're creating a square, and a certain dichotomy is decided upon. It could be a a Republican and a Democratic view of a particular issue, or it could be an example that was when I was in a playback ensemble, was that you're at a movie theater, and you're really engrossed in this movie, and yet you have to pee, right? So you have these two opposite forces going on at the same time. And so the way that's done is that the first pair plays that, and the pairs are actually, there's one person in front of another. So you have a person in back and a person in front, but they're they're close together. They're actually touching. And so you say, let's watch, and then the person in front picks one side of that. Say we do the movie theater thing. So they're like, oh wow, this movie is incredible. I just love what's going on. And at the same time, there's the person in back is going, oh man, I gotta pee. I really gotta pee. Oh, and it's like they do this kind of there's like this one-upmanship that goes on, and this tension gets created by them. And they do that for for about 30 seconds, and then they freeze, and then it goes to the next pair, and they do the same thing, and then they freeze, and then it goes to the next. And if just in terms of visibility to the audience, if a pair is sort of blocking the view, then they just move to the side when that pair behind is doing theirs. But anyway, it goes through all the pairs, and that's the end. That's the form, and that's called pairs. Okay, so that's the those are the forms that are used from playback theater to kind of give a foundation of ensemble experience and technique. So now moving to the actual playing back of a dream, this is the process. So when in the room we have chairs set up, you have the audience, but then backstage you have, to the back of the stage, you have a semicircle of chairs, right? It's open to the audience. And you have two chairs at the left end, and then there's a little gap, and then you have the chairs for the ensemble, however many people are in the ensemble. And these two chairs over here are for the dreamer sits on the outside, and then next to the dreamer is the conductor. And then there's a little gap, and then there's the ensemble. And the job of the conductor is to sort of facilitate the understanding of the dream to the ensemble, right? So the person says the dream, and then the conductor retells it, just to make sure that the dream is understood and all the elements are clear. And then he asks the dreamer, what are the important elements of this dream? So this is where playing back your dream becomes, it takes on its own unique character regarding playback. What are the important elements of the dream? And those elements, can be a person, it can be, an object, it can be a setting, it can be an emotion, it can be a concept, like time or space. But whatever seems important in the dream, those elements are named. Now, if we're if we're just doing this monthly, experience with ourselves, then we're all potentially members of the ensemble, and then the dream teller can decide if they want to be part of the ensemble to play back this dream, or to have themselves sit out and watch it. They can choose that. So then it's determined how many elements we can have in this dream. So if we have 5 ensemble members, and then one of them is the dreamer and then the conductor, so then we have potentially 7 elements, or 6 if the dreamer wants to sit out. So then we take those elements and decide, what are the most important, so that we can play back, say they want to be in it, we can play back all 7 elements. And then the dreamer gets to decide, well, first of all, the ensemble members get to ask about the element if they need that. And usually they don't. Usually it's just, you just kind of rely on your own interpretation of that element. But sometimes you might, if there's this like a, an element that just has kind of like a broad amount of association, the player might want to say, well, what does this, if I was from Mars, describe to me in 25 words or less what this element is. So you get your, the dreamer's own particular take on that element. Anyway, after everybody understands the elements well enough to play, then the dreamer gets to, if he wants, gets to, pick an element he wants to play or choose people to play each element. Or if he doesn't really want to do that, then basically the protocol is that you go to the far end and you let that person choose first, and then each person you move in and chooses one of the elements. So now you have everybody decided on a certain element that they're going to play, and then you want to just decide about what we call chronology. And this gets to another point about playing back your dream, that you don't have to always just play a dream the way it happened in the dream. You can just decide what are the important elements, and then just have those elements just interact with each other in a I'll call it a plotless scenario, but actually what happens in the scenario is a new plot is formed. But so you don't necessarily have to follow the plot of the dream. But anyway, if there are elements that happen later in the dream and you want to play it that way, then you decide that, and then those elements stand off to the side at the beginning of the scene. They're not actually on the stage as the activity ensues. So we have the elements decided. We have the characters playing the elements. We have decided about the chronology. Now, what I want to give here is a way to, if you don't have experience with improv theater, a way to create your character. Before I was in a playback theater ensemble, I did some improv theater, and I'd go to these groups, and there were a lot of experienced people, and they would say, all right, let's just do a scene, and I was like, oh, wait, how do you become it's like the becoming a character was always like, how do you do this, And so this, what I want to present now is a way of doing that. How do you make a character a character? So there's some questions you can ask to help do that. Who are you? Right? You just kind of define, and these questions are questions that you want to ask for yourself, but they're also questions that you want to answer for yourself and for the ensemble and for the audience. So however you're going to express the answer to these questions, whether you're going to actually just say it in words, or you're going to act it, or react it, you're going to answer these questions and express that, who you are, where you are, what is the setting, and that setting might be determined at the beginning of the playing, when you're talking about the elements, but you as a particular element character are going to be seeing that setting in this particular way, and that needs to be expressed. What is, are there particular objects that are in the environment that may not be played by people, that may be particular to your character, that enforce, that support your character. You want to be naming those things. And not only objects in terms of a physical object, but objects in the sense of an objective or a desire. In other words, what does your character want? What is the role of your character? What is your character trying to do in this situation? How is your character trying to make other players feel, or even make the audience feel? So you have you answer the what of the desire, you answer the what of your character, and then the next thing that you need to answer is, what are the obstacles to your character achieving that desire? So say I was playing a police officer in a scene, and my objective, my desire, is to get people to follow rules, but an obstacle to that desire might be that some extenuating circumstances where a woman left her car illegally parked because she had to rush her baby into a hospital, right? That would be an obstacle to the objective of having people follow rules. So you answer that question, and then you answer the question, what is the resolution, right? There might not always be a resolution of your element in terms of the overall play, but if there can be a resolution, that's a good thing. So we're answering these questions again, just to review: who, what, where, what, and that what, of course, incorporates the objective or the desire. What is the obstacle and what is the resolution? And like I said earlier, that these can be expressed. They have to be known to the character, but they can be expressed to the other players and to the audience through action, through reaction, or through talking. Okay, so that's how you play. That's one way to play, to set up your character. So people get on stage, they're ready. If people are entering later, they're off stage, and then somebody says, "Let's watch." And then basically you have this spontaneous, improvised interaction between the elements. And sometimes it's following the scenario of the dream, and sometimes it's not. It's just a free form, fresh interaction. And it's important that to recognize here that this playing back your dream can be a paradream. It can go beyond the dream. In other words, if there's some kind of problem that's presented in a dream, the playing back can solve the problem, can go beyond it, or it can just, if the dream is in a sense a cliff, the elements can jump off the cliff and just enter into a active imagination continuation of the dream. So so we have the let's watch, and they play, and then when there is some sense of resolution that happens in the dream, then somebody calls scene. And it's important here to recognize that you don't want to just play the dream. I mean, sometimes it's appropriate to just play the dream back, and sometimes that's a dreamer just needs to see the dream acted out. Sometimes that's all that's needed. That's valuable. But often there needs to be some kind of resolution. And so what I'm suggesting here is that you push that the players, they push past just, presenting the elements, and they actually look for some kind of if each element is looking for some kind of fulfillment, then the dream will the playing back of the dream will actually become this revelatory experience. So to push, to to keep going until something's actually like there's something's realized. But you don't want to go too long either. You don't want to just like have it just continually going on. And sometimes it seems like it's it's just continually going on and it's morphing from one thing to the next. When it's like that, you want to just kind of keep an eye on it. It's like, okay, we're looking for an ending here, right? And as soon as something looks like it could be an ending, then you call scene. So it's, there's a lot of different levels here and sensibilities that get developed as you do this more and more. So anyway, you call scene. Everybody goes back to the semicircle, same places that they were. And the dreamer goes first and says what that was like for them, what they got, if they had any realizations, and if they were actually a player to actually tell their experience of playing that particular element. Then you go to the outside of the, like I said before, the other end of the semicircle, and that person, whatever element they were, they tell their experience, and each person takes a turn and tells their experience all the way, through the conductor, because the conductor very often is a player also. So what I want to point out here is that this is a method of dream work, and in a lot of dream work, you talk about what the dream means. In this method, we're not sitting down talking about what the dream means. We're letting the scene interpret the dream. In other words, we want to refrain from speculation about, oh yeah, well I think that, it's like each element tells their experience. And in that telling, the meaning of the dream is revealed. So then when it gets back to the dreamer again, then they have a chance to, after hearing all these different experiences of the elements, they get to, in a sense, conclude, what this dream means. Now, sometimes it's appropriate to do a little meta interpretation, right? If one of the elements had a certain, if they had an experience while they were playing their part, of course that comes out in the check-in. But after the whole kind of check-in part of it, someone might they might see an aspect of the dream that maybe the dreamer's not seeing, but they just feel, like, yeah, there's something important here and it's not being talked about. Then it's appropriate, it could be appropriate to share that, but the way it's done is particularly. There was a man who his name was Jeremy Taylor, and he pioneered a method of dream work which is called projective dream work. And in projective dream work, what is the approach is the assumption that anything anybody has to say about a dream, really, whether it's your dream or somebody else's, it's all a projection. It's like, it's just how you're seeing it, and there is not necessarily any truth in what you're sharing. So if you take that approach and you say something like, well, if this was my dream, then that's what you're sharing. You're just making it very clear that you're just sharing your perspective about what this dream might mean if it was your own. And then the dreamer is free to say, wow, I didn't even see that way. Thanks for sharing that. Or they might say, I don't really, that doesn't really help me here. So anyway, there is room for this meta interpretation, but it's auxiliary. The main thrust of this dream work is let the scene interpret the dream. Okay, so and then there's just dreamer, is this a good stopping place? Did you get what you need? Yes, and then you end it, and then you can go on to another dream. So yeah, there's just a couple of tips in terms of uh, like ensemble technique, and uh, so you want to always remember that even when it's just the ensemble and it's just meeting monthly and there's no audience really, there's still always that imaginary audience. You're always playing to an audience. You're practicing that. It's a form. It's the form. This is a performance, a performance art form, and um, you want to you want to uphold that form. So you're always playing to the audience. So you never turn your back to the audience, right? You're always kind of cheating. You're playing to the audience, but you're also playing to the ensemble. So it's important that you keep that in mind. The other thing, well, that's more in terms of visual. In terms of auditory, that it very easily can happen that you start to have like these pair interactions between two elements, and there's like multiple conversations going on at the same time, and it can be cacophonous. So what you want to do as a player is, if you is to remind yourself that if you cannot hear everything that's going on stage, even if you're talking to somebody, right, and there's another conversation going on over here, and you can't hear that conversation, chances are the audience can't hear it either. So you got to somehow include that, whether that means you've got to stop talking, or you've got to slow down so that your words are interspersed with theirs. Um, and it also, it might mean that you're talking too quietly. So you've got to also kind of put your attention out to the audience, and it's like if you're saying something very quietly over here, and you think, can somebody in the audience actually hear me? Even if you're in a sense whispering, you've got to make the whispering audible. So this is a tricky area, and it's kind of hard to achieve, but it's definitely um, achievable. And it might mean that you, like I said, you might need to just like curb your own conversation until this one is done, and then do that. Um, so, and the other tip is that sometimes you can't, like, there's more important elements than there are players. So one thing that you can do in that case is that um, you can use like the chorus, right? The chorus is great because all the elements can just come out through the chorus, that form, and you don't have to designate each element to a player. So yeah, sometimes the forms can be directly imported into the playing back of a dream. Um, and the last thing is just to reiterate that the scene interprets the dream. That's the scene interprets the dream, and that the elements are turned into characters. So I'm Christopher McClure from Wholeness Geeks, and this has been a presentation about the elements of a Playing Back Your Dream workshop, and we will be having a workshop coming up here. So if you're interested in being involved with this kind of work, go ahead and follow the link and get the information. So thanks for listening to Meditation Happy Hour, playing back your dream.